High Counselor Veilthorax adjusted the quantum resonance frequencies of her observation array, her six-fingered hands dancing across controls that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. For 3 millennia, the Zephyrian hegemony had reigned supreme across the Andromeda spiral, their technology so advanced that matter itself bent to their will. Yet today, something had captured her attention, a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star in a backwater galaxy. "Curious," she murmured, her crystalline voice echoing through the observation chamber. The data streams flowing before her translucent form painted a picture of a species that defied all logical categorization. These humans possessed no telepathic abilities, no natural energy manipulation, and their technology was laughably primitive. They still burned fossil fuels and had barely begun to harness nuclear fusion. Sub-Commander Nithorus materialized beside her, his form shimmering with the characteristic blue-white radiance of their species. "High Counselor, the Strategic Assessment Division has completed their preliminary analysis. This species shows concerning anomalies in their behavioral patterns." Veilthorax's attention shifted from the holographic displays to her subordinate. In her 3,000 years of existence, she had catalogued over 47,000 sentient species. Most followed predictable evolutionary paths, developing higher consciousness, transcending physical limitations, and eventually joining the galactic community as junior partners to more advanced civilizations. The humans, however, seemed to deliberately choose the most inefficient path forward. "Show me," she commanded. The chamber transformed around them, displaying countless human conflicts throughout their brief history. Nithorus gestured toward a particularly brutal engagement. "Observe this conflict they call World War II. Despite facing technologically superior forces, smaller human nations repeatedly achieved victory through what they term determination. Their soldiers would continue fighting even when mathematically certain of defeat." Veilthorax studied the data with growing fascination. She watched humans charge against impossible odds, sacrifice themselves for abstract concepts like freedom, and rebuild their civilizations from ashes time and again. It was magnificent in its irrationality. "Their psychological profiles are equally perplexing," Nithorus continued. "They possess an almost pathological refusal to accept limitations. When told something is impossible, they often interpret this as a challenge rather than fact." The High Counselor traced mathematical equations in the air, calculating probability matrices that stretched across multiple realities. Every simulation reached the same conclusion: this species should have destroyed itself millennia ago. Their tendency toward conflict, combined with their rapid technological advancement, created an unsustainable equation. Yet here they were, not only surviving but thriving. "Perhaps," Veilthorax mused, "we have been observing evolution through too narrow a lens." She had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. The pattern was always the same: a species would develop consciousness, master their environment, achieve technological transcendence, and then gradually lose the very qualities that had driven them to greatness. They became peaceful, logical, and ultimately stagnant. The Zephyrians themselves had followed this path, achieving near-godlike powers but losing something indefinable in the process. Nithorus highlighted another anomaly in the data. "High Counselor, there is something else. They appear to be on the verge of a breakthrough in quantum mechanics that should be impossible given their current technological level. Our theoretical physicists estimate they are advancing at a rate that defies all known models of scientific development." The implications were staggering. If humanity continued on their current trajectory, they might pose a threat to the established galactic order within mere centuries rather than millennia. Veilthorax had seen what happened when primitive species developed advanced technology too quickly: they usually destroyed themselves or became conquest-driven expansionists. "Summon the High Council," she ordered. "This species requires immediate attention." As Nithorus departed to carry out her instructions, Veilthorax remained alone with the human data streams. She found herself drawn to individual stories within the vast tapestry of human experience. A scientist named Marie Curie exposing herself to deadly radiation in pursuit of knowledge. An explorer called Ernest Shackleton leading his crew across impossible Antarctic wastes. Countless unnamed individuals choosing hope over despair in the face of overwhelming odds. The Zephyrians had long ago concluded that pure logic was the highest form of existence. They had eliminated war, poverty, and suffering from their society through careful planning and superior technology. Yet watching these humans, Veilthorax felt something she hadn't experienced in centuries: uncertainty. Perhaps there was value in struggle that her people had forgotten. She composed her report for the High Council, but found herself hesitating over the recommended course of action. The logical choice was clear: neutralize the potential threat before it fully developed. The humans were too unpredictable, too dangerous to allow unrestricted growth. But something about their burning determination gave her pause. The High Council chamber existed simultaneously across 12 dimensions, its crystalline architecture defying conventional geometry. Veilthorax materialized at the center of the seven-pointed configuration, facing 6 of the most powerful beings in the known universe. Each council member represented a different aspect of Zephyrian society: science, war, philosophy, commerce, art, and spirit. Council Prime Zerathion's form pulsed with ancient authority as he reviewed Veilthorax's findings. His consciousness had existed for over 10,000 years, making him one of the oldest sentient beings in their galaxy. This species exhibits dangerous instability, he concluded after absorbing the data streams. Their emotional volatility combined with rapid technological advancement presents an unacceptable risk. War Aspect Thakmorian's response was immediate and predictable. Recommendation: immediate sterilization. We have the capability to induce a controlled solar flare that would appear natural. The humans would never know what eliminated them. But Science Aspect Ylestra raised an objection that surprised everyone present. The data suggests these humans may have stumbled upon something we've overlooked. Their chaotic development model produces innovations that our systematic approach cannot replicate. Perhaps we should study them further before taking irreversible action. Veilthorax seized the opening. I propose a controlled first contact scenario. We reveal ourselves to their most advanced scientists and observe their response. If they prove manageable, we can guide their development. If not. She left the alternative unspoken. The debate that followed spanned 17 hours and touched upon philosophical questions that had puzzled the Zephyrians for millennia. What was the purpose of existence if all struggle was eliminated? Could a species truly grow without facing genuine challenges? The humans seemed to embody everything the Zephyrians had sacrificed in their pursuit of perfection. Finally, Council Prime Zerathion rendered his decision. We will proceed with limited contact. Veilthorax will lead a small expedition to evaluate human potential. The parameters are strict: no technology transfer, no cultural contamination, and immediate termination protocols if the situation becomes unstable. 3 days later, Veilthorax found herself aboard the scout vessel Eternal Vigilance, approaching Earth's solar system. Her team consisted of Nithris, the philosopher Kazarian, and the warrior Moldex, each representing different aspects of their civilization. The ship itself was a masterwork of Zephyrian engineering, capable of existing partially outside normal spacetime to avoid detection. They chose to make contact with Dr. Elena Vasquez, a quantum physicist at the European Space Research Council whose work had caught their attention. Her theories on multidimensional energy manipulation were surprisingly sophisticated for a human. The team materialized in her laboratory during a late-night research session, employing translation matrices to communicate in her language. Dr. Vasquez's reaction was not what they expected. Instead of falling to her knees in worship or fleeing in terror, she stared at them for a long moment, then said, "Well, this explains some of the energy readings we've been detecting. You're operating on quantum frequencies that shouldn't be possible with conventional physics." Nithris exchanged glances with Veilthorax. Most species they'd contacted had required extensive psychological conditioning before meaningful communication could occur. This human seemed to adapt to their presence with remarkable speed. We are representatives of an advanced civilization, Veilthorax explained. We have been observing your species and have concerns about your development. Elena leaned back in her chair, her eyes bright with curiosity rather than fear. Concerns? About what specifically? Our tendency toward conflict? Our environmental management? Or are you worried about something else entirely? The directness of her questions was unsettling. Most species approached first contact with reverence or at least appropriate caution. This human treated them like colleagues who had dropped by for a scientific discussion. Kazarian spoke for the first time. Your species displays patterns that violate our understanding of evolutionary stability. You pursue impossible goals and refuse to accept rational limitations. This behavior is unprecedented. Elena smiled, an expression that somehow conveyed both warmth and defiance. You mean you've never met anyone stubborn enough to keep trying when logic says they should quit? She gestured toward her cluttered laboratory. That's kind of our thing. We don't just accept that something can't be done. We figure out how to do it anyway. Moldex had remained silent throughout the exchange, but Veilthorax could sense his growing unease. The warrior was trained to assess threats, and something about this human's confidence was triggering his defensive instincts. Demonstrate, Moldex commanded suddenly. Show us this determination you claim to possess. Elena's response would haunt Veilthorax for the rest of her existence. The human stood, walked to her workspace, and began explaining her current project, an attempt to create stable quantum tunnels using only primitive human technology. According to Zephyrian physics, it should have been impossible. According to Elena's calculations, it was merely very difficult. For the next 6 hours, they watched her work. She failed repeatedly, each attempt producing dangerous energy discharges that would have discouraged any rational being. But Elena simply made adjustments and tried again, her determination growing stronger with each failure. As dawn broke through the laboratory windows, something extraordinary happened. Elena's crude apparatus achieved stable quantum tunneling for 3.7 seconds, a feat that had taken the Zephyrian centuries to accomplish with vastly superior technology. Veilthorax realized they had made a crucial error. They hadn't discovered a primitive species to be guided or eliminated. They had found something far more dangerous, a people who would never stop pushing forward, no matter what stood in their way. Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at her quantum tunnel apparatus with the intensity of someone who had just witnessed the impossible. The energy readings were unlike anything in human scientific literature, yet somehow she had achieved them using equipment that the Zephyrians considered laughably primitive. Veilthorax found herself reassessing every assumption her people had made about technological development. This should not function, Nithorus whispered in their native language, his crystalline form flickering with distress. The mathematical constraints alone make stable tunneling impossible without quantum-coherent materials. Elena looked up from her calculations, somehow having caught the meaning despite the alien words. You're assuming I'm following your mathematical constraints. Human mathematics doesn't always play by the same rules, especially when we decide the rules are wrong. The statement was so fundamentally alien to Zephyrian thinking that Kazarian felt compelled to respond. Mathematics is universal. Physical laws cannot be circumvented through determination alone. Can't they? Elena pulled up a holographic display showing her experimental data. You see quantum barriers as immutable walls. We see them as puzzles to solve. The difference isn't in our technology, it's in our approach to impossibility. Over the following weeks, Veilthorax's team observed Elena's research with growing amazement and concern. The human worked 18-hour days, often forgetting to eat or sleep in her pursuit of breakthrough after breakthrough. When her equipment failed, she rebuilt it. When her theories proved insufficient, she developed new ones. When her university cut her funding, she mortgaged her home to continue the work. Moldex found the behavior pathological. She is destroying herself pursuing meaningless goals. No rational being would sacrifice their well-being for such marginal gains. But Veilthorax was beginning to understand something profound. The Zephyrians had achieved their technological supremacy through careful planning, vast resources, and millennia of gradual progress. They had eliminated struggle from the equation, creating a smooth path to advancement. Humans, however, seemed to thrive on struggle itself. Request permission to observe other human research facilities, she transmitted to the High Council. This individual's behavior may not be isolated. The response came swiftly, permission granted. Maintain observation protocols. Their investigation revealed a pattern that defied all rational analysis. Across the globe, human scientists were achieving impossible breakthroughs through sheer stubborn refusal to accept limitations. Dr. Kwame Asante in Ghana was developing fusion reactions using modified solar panel technology. Dr. Yuki Tanaka in Japan had created primitive matter transmutation using nothing but focused magnetic fields and extraordinary patience. Each researcher worked in isolation, unaware that their efforts were being observed by beings capable of effortlessly accomplishing what they struggled to achieve. Yet somehow, their crude methods were producing results that impressed even the Zephyrians. "There is something we're missing," Veilthorax reported to the High Council during their next communication window. "Their inefficiency is becoming a form of efficiency. Their seemingly random approach to problem-solving generates solutions we would never consider." Council Prime Zerathion's response carried undertones of growing concern. Elaborate. "We approach challenges with overwhelming resources and perfect theoretical models. Humans approach challenges with insufficient resources and imperfect theories, forcing them to find creative solutions. Their limitations are creating capabilities we lack." The implications were staggering. The Zephyrians had long ago concluded that there was one optimal path to any technological goal. They had developed machines that could calculate the most efficient solution to any problem within seconds. But humans seemed to find multiple paths to the same destination, often discovering unexpected benefits along the way. Science Aspect Ulestra's analysis confirmed Veilthorax's suspicions. Preliminary data suggests their chaotic development model produces innovations at a rate 347% higher than our systematic approach. This is theoretically impossible. War Aspect Thakmorian's concern was more immediate. If they continue advancing at this rate, they will achieve interstellar capability within decades rather than centuries. Our strategic advantage could be compromised. But it was Spirit Aspect Vorthian who identified the deeper issue. They are not merely advancing technologically. They are advancing philosophically. Each challenge they overcome strengthens their resolve to overcome the next. We may be witnessing the emergence of a species that cannot be defeated because they refuse to accept defeat. Back on Earth, Elena had made another breakthrough. Her quantum tunneling experiments had evolved into something approaching teleportation technology. She had managed to transfer a simple molecule across her laboratory instantly, bypassing conventional space entirely. According to Zephyrian science, such achievement should require massive energy expenditures and exotic materials. Elena had accomplished it using caffeine-fueled determination and repurposed microwave components. "I don't understand how you exist," Moldex finally admitted to Elena during one of their increasingly frequent conversations. "Your species should have destroyed itself eons ago. You take impossible risks for marginal gains." Elena smiled, that distinctly human expression that had begun to unnerve all of them. "Maybe that's exactly why we exist. Maybe the universe needs someone crazy enough to try impossible things." She turned back to her latest experiment, an attempt to create stable wormholes using nothing but human-built equipment. The energy readings were already approaching dangerous levels, but Elena showed no signs of slowing down. "Besides," she added, adjusting a component that by all rights should have exploded, "what's the worst that could happen?" The question hung in the air like a challenge to the cosmos itself. Veilthorax realized that Elena wasn't asking hypothetically, she genuinely didn't fear the consequences of failure. For humans, the worst outcome wasn't death or destruction. It was giving up. As the High Counselor watched Elena work, she began to understand something that would change everything. The humans weren't just developing technology. They were developing something far more dangerous, an unshakable belief that any problem could be solved if they just kept trying long enough. It was a belief that could reshape the galaxy. 3 months into their observation period, Valtherax made a discovery that would fundamentally alter the Zephyrians' understanding of reality itself. While monitoring Elena's communications, she detected patterns that suggested the human scientist wasn't working alone, at least not in the way her species understood collaboration. Elena had been sharing her research through primitive electronic networks, communicating with other humans across the planet who were working on similar problems. But instead of coordinating their efforts for maximum efficiency, they were deliberately pursuing different approaches to the same challenges. From a Zephyrian perspective, it was wasteful chaos. From a human perspective, it was something far more profound. They are running parallel experiments simultaneously, Kazarian observed, his philosophical core struggling to process the concept. Multiple teams working on identical problems with no central coordination. The redundancy alone should make advancement impossible. Nitharus highlighted the communication patterns. Observe their interaction protocols. They share failures as readily as successes. They deliberately inform their competitors about their mistakes. This behavior violated every principle of logical development. Advanced civilizations conserved resources by avoiding duplication of effort. They shared successful methodologies while concealing failed approaches to prevent others from wasting time on dead ends. Humans seemed to do the opposite. Dr. Elena Vasquez was simultaneously collaborating and competing with Dr. Chen Wei in Beijing, who was working on quantum tunneling using an entirely different theoretical framework. Instead of coordinating their research to avoid overlap, they were comparing methodologies and challenging each other's assumptions in real time. Elena, your harmonic resonance approach is elegant, but have you considered quantum phase alignment? Dr. Chen's message appeared on Elena's screen during one of their observation sessions. Chen, I tried phase alignment last month. Created a small singularity that nearly consumed my laboratory. But your crystalline matrix idea might work with some modifications. Elena began sketching equations that incorporated both their approaches. Moldex watched this exchange with growing agitation. They are revealing tactical weaknesses to potential adversaries. This behavior ensures mutual destruction. But Valtherax was beginning to see something else entirely. The humans weren't weakening themselves through information sharing, they were strengthening their entire species. Each failure shared prevented others from making the same mistake. Each success shared accelerated everyone's progress. They had created an inefficiency engine that somehow produced more efficiency than any systematic approach. They have weaponized failure, she realized aloud. Every mistake becomes ammunition for future success. The observation data supported her theory. Human technological advancement wasn't following the smooth logarithmic curve that characterized other species. Instead, it proceeded in violent leaps and sudden breakthroughs, each spike corresponding to a period of intense collaborative failure followed by distributed learning. Dr. Amara Okafor in Lagos had just achieved room temperature fusion by combining Elena's tunneling theories with Chen's phase alignment and her own electromagnetic confinement concepts. The breakthrough came not from careful planning but from what humans called building on each other's work. This is unprecedented, Valtherax reported to the High Council. They have created a development model that turns chaos into order, competition into collaboration, and failure into progress. We may be observing the emergence of a collective intelligence. Council Prime Zerathion's response carried undertones of alarm. Clarify, are you suggesting the humans represent a hive mind? Negative. They maintain individual consciousness and often disagree violently. But somehow their conflicts generate solutions that none of them could achieve alone. They argue, compete, and challenge each other, and this process accelerates their development rather than hindering it. War Aspect Thakmorian had reached his own conclusion. Recommendation: immediate intervention. This species represents an existential threat to galactic stability. Their development model is contagious. If other primitive species adopt their approach, the established order could collapse. But science aspect Yelestra raised an unexpected objection. Request permission to study their methods. Our own development has stagnated for the past millennium. Perhaps we could adapt their techniques to overcome our technological plateau. The suggestion sent shockwaves through the High Council. The Zephyrians hadn't questioned their methods in thousands of years. They had achieved near perfection in every field of endeavor. Why would they need to learn from primitives? Their methods are inherently destructive, Council Prime Zirathion observed. Adapting them would require abandoning our principles of efficiency and logic. Perhaps, Veilthorax interjected, efficiency and logic are not the highest values. Perhaps growth itself requires a certain amount of controlled chaos. Back on Earth, Elena was preparing for her most ambitious experiment yet. Working with her global network of collaborators, she intended to create a stable wormhole large enough to transport matter across interstellar distances. The energy requirements were staggering, the risk of catastrophic failure was enormous, and the chance of success was mathematically insignificant. You realize this could destroy your entire planet, Moldex warned her during one of their conversations. Elena paused in her calculations, considering the possibility with the same calm attention she gave to any other variable. Yes, I've run those numbers. The probability of total planetary extinction is approximately 0.3%. The probability of achieving faster-than-light travel is approximately 0.7%. The probability of learning something valuable regardless of outcome approaches 100%. Those odds should terrify you. They do, Elena admitted. But terror isn't the opposite of determination, it's fuel for it. When we're scared, we think harder, work faster, and push further than we thought possible. She turned back to her equipment, making final adjustments to systems that shouldn't function according to known physics. Around the globe, 17 other teams were making similar preparations for their own versions of the experiment. Some would fail catastrophically. Others would achieve partial success. A few might accomplish the impossible. The beautiful thing about being human, Elena continued, is that we don't have to succeed. We just have to try. And we never stop trying. As Veilthorax watched the preparations unfold, she realized the humans had revealed something profound about the nature of advancement itself. Progress didn't come from avoiding failure, it came from embracing failure as an inevitable step toward success. They had built an entire civilization on the principle that every mistake was just another way of finding what actually worked. It was magnificent, terrifying, and utterly unstoppable. The experiment began at precisely 1423 Universal Time across 17 different laboratories spanning 6 continents. Veilthorax and her team monitored the attempts from their cloaked vessel, watching with a mixture of fascination and horror as humanity prepared to either achieve the impossible or destroy themselves trying. Elena's laboratory in Geneva had become the de facto coordination center, not through any official designation but through the organic consensus that seemed to govern human collaborative efforts. Her voice carried across the global communication network, calm and steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. Phase 1 initiation in 30 seconds, she announced. Remember, we're not just trying to create wormholes, we're trying to understand why they form. Every data point matters, whether we succeed or fail spectacularly. Dr. Chen Wei's facility in Beijing activated first, his crystalline matrix approach sending energy readings that defied conventional physics. Quantum alignment achieved. Singularity formation detected. Elena, the resonance patterns are unlike anything we predicted. Across the globe, Dr. Amara Okafor's electromagnetic confinement systems engaged, creating field densities that would have impressed even Zephyrian engineers. Lagos online. Field stability at 97% and climbing. These readings are beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Nitharus transmitted rapid calculations to Veilthorax. Combined energy output approaching levels that could destabilize local spacetime. Recommend immediate intervention to prevent catastrophic cascade failure. But Veilthorax held back, transfixed by what she was witnessing. The humans weren't just conducting an experiment, they were engaged in an act of collective courage that transcended individual survival instincts. Each team knew the risks, understood the potential for failure, yet pressed forward with unwavering determination. Field coherence established, reported Dr. Yuki Tanaka from Tokyo. Initiating matter transmission sequence. If anyone detects anomalous readings, abort immediately, but not before documenting everything. The first attempts failed within seconds. Dr. Raj Patel's team in Mumbai achieved portal formation for 0.3 seconds before experiencing catastrophic containment failure. The explosion destroyed half their laboratory and sent energy signatures cascading across multiple dimensions. Instead of discouraging the other teams, the failure provided crucial data about resonance thresholds. Mumbai data confirms harmonic ceiling at 847.3 terahertz, Dr. Patel reported from his hospital bed, his right arm in a cast but his voice bright with excitement. Adjust your frequencies accordingly. This is good, we're learning the universe's limits. Moldex found the response incomprehensible. He suffered severe injury and equipment destruction, yet expresses satisfaction with the outcome. This emotional dysfunction explains their species' self-destructive tendencies. But Kazarian was beginning to understand something deeper. He isn't satisfied with injury, he's satisfied with knowledge. They value understanding above personal safety. The pattern repeated across the globe. Sao Paulo achieved stable portal formation for 2.7 seconds before overload. Sydney managed to transport a single hydrogen atom successfully before their containment field collapsed. Each failure provided data that improved the next attempt. Elena's turn came last. Her laboratory had become the focal point of accumulated human knowledge, incorporating lessons learned from 16 previous attempts. The energy readings built slowly, following resonance patterns that had been refined through collective trial and error. Geneva initiating final sequence, Elena announced. All stations record maximum detail. If this works, we need to understand why. If it fails, we need to understand that too. The quantum tunneling apparatus engaged with a harmonic frequency that seemed to resonate through multiple dimensions simultaneously. Energy patterns flowed in configurations that violated several fundamental laws of physics, yet somehow maintained stability through pure human stubborn refusal to acknowledge impossibility. Portal formation achieved, Elena reported, her voice tight with concentration. Diameter, 2.3 meters. Stability, increasing. I'm reading quantum coherence across interstellar distances. Veilthorax watched in stunned silence as Elena's crude human technology created a stable wormhole connecting Earth to a point in space over 4 light-years away. The energy signatures matched patterns that had taken the Zephyrians centuries to develop using exotic materials and massive computational resources. She did it with spare parts and determination, Nitharus whispered in disbelief. But Elena wasn't finished. Instead of celebrating her success, she began pushing the experiment further. Testing matter transmission, she announced. Starting with simple particles and increasing complexity. A paper airplane, folded from her notebook, became humanity's first interstellar traveler. It passed through the portal and emerged near Alpha Centauri in less than a nanosecond. The success was captured by monitoring equipment and transmitted to every human facility. Matter transmission confirmed, Elena reported. The wormhole is stable, navigable, and apparently permanent. We've just connected Earth to the stars. The celebration that erupted across the global communication network was unlike anything the Zephyrians had witnessed. Humans who had never met in person were sharing tears of joy across continents. Teams that had competed fiercely were now planning collaborative expeditions through the portal. The species that had spent millennia fighting over resources was suddenly united by their shared achievement of the impossible. Council Prime, Veilthorax transmitted to the High Council, humanity has achieved faster-than-light travel using primitive technology and collective determination. They have opened a stable interstellar gateway. The strategic implications are significant. The response came swiftly, immediate termination protocols authorized. Neutralize the portal before it can be replicated. But as Veilthorax prepared to comply with her orders, Elena's voice cut across the communication channels with words that would haunt the High Counselor forever. To whoever might be listening out there among the stars, this is humanity saying hello. We know we're not alone now, and we're not afraid. We're coming to find you, and we're bringing the one thing that's always defined us, the absolute refusal to give up on tomorrow. Through the portal's energy signatures, Veilthorax detected something that changed everything: other wormholes, dozens of them, opening across human space as teams replicated Elena's success. Humanity hadn't just achieved interstellar travel, they had instantly become an interstellar civilization. The determination that had seemed so inefficient was revealing its true power. It wasn't just a way of solving problems, it was a way of becoming unstoppable. War Aspect Thakmorian's assault fleet materialized at the edge of Earth's solar system with devastating precision. 47 vessels capable of sterilizing entire worlds emerged from quantum space, their weapons arrays already charging for the systematic elimination of human civilization. The operation should have been routine. Countless primitive species had been neutralized before achieving dangerous technological levels. But as the Zephyrian fleet approached Earth, they encountered something unprecedented. Humanity was ready for them. Impossible, Thakmorian transmitted to the High Council. Our intelligence indicated no defensive capabilities beyond primitive nuclear weapons. I am detecting energy signatures that match our own technology. Through the observation data, Veilthorax watched the unfolding scenario with a mixture of pride and terror. In the 3 days since Elena's successful wormhole experiment, humanity had transformed itself into something unrecognizable. The species that had taken millennia to develop basic spaceflight had reverse-engineered Zephyrian technology through pure analytical determination. Elena, Dr. Chen Wei's voice crackled across the global communication network. The quantum resonance patterns from your portal are incredibly similar to the energy signatures we've been detecting from our visitors. I think we can adapt the wormhole technology for defensive purposes. Elena's response came from aboard the hastily constructed orbital platform that had become humanity's first space fortress. Already working on it, Chen. If these aliens want to visit us, they're going to have to accept our hospitality first. Veilthorax's sensors detected the impossible, human-built vessels emerging from newly constructed wormholes around Thakmorian's fleet. The ships were crewed by Zephyrian standards, held together with determination and improvised engineering, but their energy signatures indicated weapons capable of threatening even advanced alien technology. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth Defense Initiative. Elena's voice transmitted across all frequencies, somehow penetrating Zephyrian communication shields through methods that shouldn't exist. We know you've been watching us, and we appreciate the scientific opportunity. But if you've come here to destroy us, you're going to discover why humans don't stay destroyed. Thakmorian's response was swift and overwhelming. The Zephyrian fleet unleashed a coordinated assault that should have vaporized every human vessel instantly. Energy beams capable of cracking planets lanced through space toward the primitive human defenders. But humanity had learned something in their brief exposure to alien technology: adaptation was more powerful than preparation. Instead of trying to match Zephyrian firepower, they had developed something uniquely human: weapons that turned the enemy's strength against itself. Quantum feedback mines activated, reported Dr. Amara Okafor from her command position aboard the African coalition vessel Ubuntu. Their own energy is being reflected back through dimensional portals. They're essentially shooting themselves. The Zephyrian fleet found their most powerful weapons not only ineffective but counterproductive. Each energy discharge was captured, amplified, and redirected by human technology that operated on principles of creative problem-solving rather than overwhelming force. How is this possible? Thakmorian demanded, watching his supposedly invincible fleet being disabled by enemies who had been using fossil fuels just decades earlier. Veilthorax provided the answer her colleague wasn't prepared to hear. They don't fight the way we fight. They don't build the way we build. They don't think the way we think. They've weaponized their inefficiency. The battle that followed would be studied by military strategists across the galaxy for millennia to come. Humanity didn't try to overpower their attackers. Instead, they confused them, outmaneuvered them, and ultimately captured them through tactics that violated every principle of logical warfare. Human vessels that should have been destroyed in the first salvo continued fighting with missing components, improvised repairs, and jury-rigged systems. When conventional weapons failed, they used unconventional ones. When unconventional weapons failed, they invented new categories of warfare entirely. Sir, Dr. Yuki Tanaka reported from the Japanese vessel Yamato, their ships appear to be experiencing cascading system failures. Our chaos algorithms are overloading their logical processing matrices. Elena's tactical approach was particularly devastating to Zephyrian military thinking. Instead of following established combat doctrines, she treated each engagement as a scientific experiment. Her fleet tested different approaches simultaneously, adapted to enemy responses in real time, and shared successful tactics across all human vessels instantly. Thakmorian, Elena transmitted directly to the War Aspect's flagship, "We don't want to fight you, but we're really good at it when we have to be. Why don't you tell us why you're here, and maybe we can solve this problem together?" The concept of negotiating during active combat was so alien to Zephyrian experience that Thakmorian's tactical computers briefly shut down trying to process the paradox. In that moment of vulnerability, human forces disabled the War Aspect's weapons and surrounded his vessel with a protective formation that somehow managed to be both threatening and welcoming. "Your offer is tactically unsound," Thakmorian responded. "We came to eliminate your species as a potential threat to galactic stability." "Well," Elena replied with characteristic human directness, "that's not going to happen. So what's your second choice?" From her concealed position, Veilthorax watched the impossible unfold. Humanity had faced their first interstellar conflict and won not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through something far more dangerous, the absolute refusal to accept that any problem couldn't be solved if they just tried hard enough. Kazarian's analysis confirmed what Veilthorax already knew. They have achieved in days what should require decades of development. Their learning curve defies all known models of technological advancement. But it was more than technological advancement. Humanity had demonstrated something that terrified the entire Zephyrian hierarchy. They couldn't be stopped because they refused to acknowledge that stopping was possible. Council Prime, Veilthorax transmitted to the High Council, recommend immediate revision of termination protocols. Humanity has proven that they cannot be eliminated through conventional means. They adapt too quickly, learn too efficiently, and most importantly, they don't surrender. The response came loaded with implications that would reshape galactic politics forever. Explain alternative recommendations. Veilthorax looked at the data streams showing human teams already reverse engineering captured Zephyrian technology, sharing discoveries freely among their entire species, and preparing for voyages to distant stars with the same enthusiasm they had once reserved for exploring their own planet. "We don't eliminate them," she finally replied. "We try to understand them. And perhaps, we try to learn from them." Council Prime Zerathion materialized in the observation chamber aboard Veilthorax's vessel, his ancient presence causing local spacetime to ripple with accumulated wisdom and power. For the first time in recorded Zephyrian history, the supreme leader of their civilization had left the sacred homeworld to personally investigate a situation in the field. "Show me," he commanded, his consciousness expanding to encompass all available data about humanity's impossible development. Veilthorax activated the quantum observation matrix, displaying the full scope of human achievement in the 7 days since first contact. The transformation was staggering by any measure, but through Zephyrian perspective, it bordered on miraculous. Humanity had not merely adapted to the revelation of alien life, they had embraced it as the ultimate challenge to overcome. Observe their primary research facility, Valthorax indicated, highlighting Elena's expanded laboratory complex. They have created a hybrid technology that combines their chaotic innovation with our systematic knowledge. The results are unprecedented. Elena stood before a massive holographic display, simultaneously coordinating 17 different interstellar expeditions while collaborating with captured Zephyrian engineers who had voluntarily joined her research team. The human scientist had somehow convinced hardened alien warriors to share their most advanced secrets through nothing more than infectious enthusiasm and genuine curiosity. The quantum harmonics in your faster-than-light drive are elegant, Elena was explaining to former War Aspect Thakmorian, who now wore human-designed environmental gear and carried a tablet loaded with Elena's theoretical calculations. But have you considered what happens if we modulate the frequency patterns randomly instead of maintaining perfect stability? Thakmorian's response would have shocked any Zephyrian observer. Random modulation violates all principles of efficient energy utilization. It should result in catastrophic system failure. Should, Elena agreed cheerfully. But should and does are different things. Want to test it? Council Prime Zerothion watched in fascination as the human scientist and the Zephyrian warrior worked together to modify alien technology using principles that made no logical sense yet somehow produced measurable improvements. The randomized frequency modulation didn't just work, it worked better than the original design. They are teaching us, Zerothion observed with something approaching wonder. A species we considered primitive is improving our most advanced technology through methods we would never consider. Nitharus highlighted additional data streams. Council Prime, their influence is spreading throughout our captured personnel. 17 Zephyrians have requested permission to remain with human research teams. They claim to be learning at rates that exceed our traditional educational matrices. The implications were staggering. Zephyrian society was built on the foundation of systematic perfection. Every process had been optimized, every inefficiency eliminated, every chaos eliminated. But humanity seemed to thrive on the very chaos that Zephyrian civilization had spent millennia eliminating. Perhaps, Kazarian suggested hesitantly, we have been approaching advancement incorrectly. Our pursuit of perfection may have created stagnation. On Earth's surface, Dr. Amara Okafor was demonstrating another impossible achievement to a group of fascinated Zephyrian scientists. Her latest invention combined human creativity with alien materials to create something neither species could have developed alone, a consciousness transfer device that allowed temporary sharing of thoughts and experiences across species barriers. The beauty of cross-species collaboration, Amara explained as she activated the device, is that we don't just share knowledge, we share ways of thinking. Your logical processes are incredible, but have you ever experienced intuition? The Zephyrian volunteers who participated in the consciousness sharing emerged from the experience fundamentally changed. They retained their advanced knowledge and logical capabilities, but gained something they had lost millennia ago, the ability to imagine beyond the boundaries of established fact. It is as if they have reminded us how to dream, reported Science Aspect Yelestra after her own consciousness-sharing session with Dr. Chen Wei. We had categorized dreaming as inefficient fantasy. We were wrong. Council Prime Zerothion absorbed the full scope of humanity's impact on Zephyrian society. In less than a week, these primitive aliens had challenged every fundamental assumption that had guided galactic civilization for thousands of years. They had proven that chaos could generate order, that inefficiency could produce superior results, and that the refusal to accept limitations was itself a form of advanced technology. The question, Zerothion finally spoke, is not whether humanity represents a threat to galactic stability. The question is whether galactic stability has become the real threat to advancement. Elena's latest project exemplified the paradigm shift that humanity represented. Working with former War Aspect Thakmorian and a team of volunteer Zephyrian engineers, she was constructing something unprecedented, a hybrid vessel that combined human adaptability with Zephyrian technology to create a new model of space exploration. The determination, Elena announced as the ship's construction neared completion, will be crewed by both species and designed to explore not just new worlds, but new ways of approaching the impossible. The vessel itself was a masterwork of hybrid engineering. Zephyrian technology provided the foundation of advanced materials and energy systems, while human innovation created adaptive systems that could evolve and improve during operation. The ship didn't just travel between stars, it learned from each journey and became more capable with experience. This contradicts every principle of spacecraft design, Thakmorian observed, yet his tone carried admiration rather than criticism. Components that modify themselves during operation should result in catastrophic instability. Should, Elena replied with that uniquely human smile that had begun appearing among Zephyrian crew members. But the universe seems to like being surprised. As the hybrid crew prepared for their first mission, a journey to the galactic core that would normally require decades of careful planning, Council Prime Zerathyon made a decision that would reshape civilization itself. All Zephyrian vessels will stand down, he commanded. Humanity will not be terminated or contained. Instead, they will be invited to join galactic civilization as teachers. The word carried implications that would be debated by philosophers across 1,000 worlds. For the first time in galactic history, an advanced civilization was acknowledging that primitives might have something valuable to teach them. Vaeltharax, Zerathyon continued, you will serve as permanent liaison to humanity. Your mission is to learn their methods and help us understand how determination itself can become a technology. As the determination prepared for launch, carrying its hybrid crew toward adventures that would challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about progress and possibility, Elena transmitted a message that would become the foundation of the new galactic paradigm. To all civilizations among the stars, we're coming to visit, and we're bringing something special, the belief that every problem is just a solution waiting to be discovered. See you out there. 5 years after first contact, High Counselor Vaeltharax stood on the observation deck of the hybrid vessel Infinite Resilience, watching a sight that would have been impossible to imagine when she first detected humanity's crude radio signals. Before them stretched the Magellan Research Station, a massive installation built cooperatively by 17 different species, all of whom had learned to embrace what humans called controlled chaos in their pursuit of advancement. Elena Vasquez, now bearing the title of Chief Innovation Officer for the Galactic Cooperative, moved through the station's corridors with the easy confidence of someone who had spent years turning impossibilities into everyday occurrences. Her graying hair and laugh lines spoke of time past, but her eyes still carried the same fierce determination that had once terrified the Zephyrian High Council. Status report, Thakmorian? Elena called to her former enemy, now closest collaborator, as they entered the central research chamber. The ex-war aspect checked his hybrid monitoring systems, devices that combine Zephyrian precision with human adaptability. Dimensional portal experiments proceeding ahead of schedule. We've successfully established permanent gateways to 12 distant galaxies. The Andromeda contingent sends their appreciation for the consciousness-sharing techniques we developed. Vaeltharax marveled at how naturally the two species had learned to work together. What had begun as humanity's stubborn refusal to be eliminated had evolved into something far more profound, a partnership that was transforming the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. And our friends from the Spiral Nebula? Elena inquired, referring to a crystalline species that had initially been too proud to acknowledge human contributions to science. They've requested human innovation teams for their latest project, Thakmorian replied with what Vaeltharax had learned to recognize as his version of amusement. Apparently, their attempt to build a perfect computer resulted in a machine too logical to think creatively. They want us to teach it how to make productive mistakes. The concept would have horrified Zephyrians just years earlier. Now it represented the cutting edge of technological development across multiple galaxies. The universe, it seemed, rewarded species that were willing to embrace uncertainty and learn from failure. Dr. Chenwei approached them, carrying data tablets that flickered with readings from their latest impossible experiment. Elena, the consciousness bridge to the quantum realm is showing interesting results. We're receiving mathematical proofs that solve theoretical problems we didn't know we had. Define interesting, Elena responded, already moving toward the experimental chamber with characteristic enthusiasm. We may have accidentally established communication with universe that operates on entirely different physical laws. They appear to be as curious about us as we are about them. Vailtharax followed the group, still struggling to adapt to humanity's approach to the impossible. For the Zephyrians, unknown phenomena were threats to be contained and studied carefully. For humans, they were opportunities to be explored immediately and enthusiastically. The experimental chamber housed humanity's latest contribution to galactic science, a device that defied every known law of physics yet somehow functioned perfectly through pure human refusal to accept that it shouldn't work. The impossibility engine, as they had inevitably named it, created bridges between different versions of reality itself. "We're receiving a transmission," Dr. Amara Okafor announced from her monitoring station. "The entities from the alternate universe want to know if we're interested in collaborative research projects." Elena's response was immediate and characteristically human. "Tell them yes, and ask if they need any help with impossible problems. That's kind of our specialty." As the team prepared for humanity's first interdimensional collaboration, Vailtharax reflected on the transformation that had swept across galactic civilization. The old paradigm of careful advancement and systematic exploration had given way to something unprecedented, a universe-wide commitment to pushing beyond every boundary and limitation. Species that had been content with slow, careful progress for millennia were now competing to develop the most audacious research projects. The Zephyrians themselves had abandoned their perfect homeworld to establish research stations in the most dangerous and chaotic regions of space, where human-style innovation could thrive. "Vailtharax," Elena said, interrupting the High Counselor's contemplation, "we need to discuss the next phase of galactic exploration. Our dimensional surveys suggest there may be entire categories of existence we haven't even imagined yet." "What are you proposing?" Vailtharax asked, though she already suspected the answer would challenge everything she thought she understood about reality. Elena's smile carried the same dangerous optimism that had first terrified the Zephyrian observers. "We're proposing to find out what lies beyond the edge of existence itself. After all, if we don't try, how will we know it's impossible?" The research station around them hummed with activity as hundreds of beings from dozens of species worked together on projects that would have been dismissed as fantasy just years earlier. They were creating new forms of matter, establishing communication with entities that existed outside conventional spacetime, and preparing for expeditions to realms that had no names in any known language. Nitharus approached with a report that somehow managed to be both routine and revolutionary. "High Counselor, the latest survey data indicates we've identified approximately 47,000 impossible projects that various species are requesting human assistance with. Current waiting list for human innovation teams extends to 847 years. Then we'll have to train more humans," Elena responded matter-of-factly. "And train non-humans to think like humans when necessary." As Vailtharax processed the implications of a universe increasingly populated by beings who refused to accept limitations, she realized that humanity had accomplished something far more significant than technological advancement. They had introduced a virus of possibility that was reshaping reality itself. "Elena," she asked quietly, "are you satisfied with what your species has achieved?" Elena considered the question while watching her hybrid crew prepare for their next impossible mission. Around them, the station's viewports revealed a cosmos that seemed larger and more full of potential than it had just years earlier. "Satisfied?" Elena finally replied. "Vailtharax, we've barely gotten started. The universe is infinite, and we've proved that impossible is just another word for, not yet attempted. Why would we ever be satisfied?" As the infinite resilience prepared to depart for the edge of known reality, carrying its mixed crew toward challenges that existed beyond the boundaries of imagination, Vailtharax understood that she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that would never stop growing because they refused to acknowledge that growth had limits. The stars themselves seemed brighter somehow, as if the universe approved of beings who dared to dream beyond the possible. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, new possibilities were being born through the simple human conviction that every tomorrow could be better than today, no matter how impossible that might seem. The determination that had once threatened galactic stability had become its greatest source of strength. Humanity hadn't conquered the universe, they had taught it how to dream.